Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Hoof Podcast. I'm Anthony Romeo, and as you guys, if you've been listening, tuning in, you know that we've been focusing on a series here called Making the Case, where our guy Sterling started out making the case for the running back position, and then Eric did a special on the offensive line, and I'm here today to take you through the tight end position. And really, I think this is one of the most dynamic positions in the offseason. There's a lot going on at tight end to talk about. I feel like we will be talking about this. We'll be the most curious to see what the Bills are going to do. All right, so let's get started here. What is a tight end? What do you expect from a tight end in the NFL? That storyline has kind of changed over the past few years. Traditionally, a tight end is a position where you get blocking, maybe occasional yardage in the red zone, somebody you can rely on, short yardage for third down. And sure, some of those things are still true. But in today's NFL, it's shifted to be a very dynamic wide receiver position, more receiving focus than blocking focus, especially at the top tier talents, right? We're talking about the Kelceys, the Kittles, Darren Waller, those types of guys lead their teams in receptions and yardage year after year. So it's totally changed the dynamics of the position and what the position means in the NFL. So what does that mean if you're not able to have one of those top elite talent guys at the position? How do you get production out of your tight end? Well, you have to have the guy who fits your scheme and fits what you're trying to do on offense. And that's a key piece in the NFL today. So with that, we'll talk about what the Bills did in 2020 at the tight end position. All right, so here we go. I think in general, the consensus is that the Bills' tight end position was not exactly blowing anybody out of the water. The production wasn't quite where we want it to be. I think that many of us coming into this season were hoping that Dawson Knox would take the next step, that he would become that elite guy. We've seen flashes of it, and he's still showing that in the NFL. He can do a lot of the stuff that those elite top guys can do. He can beat guys. He can make plays. He can throw a stiff arm and a block. But he hasn't been able to do it consistency, and he was injury prone this past season, especially in a COVID-shortened season. There's a lot of excuses you could make for Knox. He didn't have the preseason that could have helped him grow. He was injured and had COVID during the season, missed games. But there's one thing that is true about Knox, and that is that the organization truly believes in him. I think that was shown this year that McDermott and Bean have put their stock in Dawson Knox, and they believe him to be their number one guy going forward. That being said, there's a lot to be desired here, as I started out by saying with the Bills. In 2020, Dawson Knox, in 12 games, had 24 catches for 288 yards and only 3 touchdowns. Now, 3 touchdowns is still pretty good production, and again, we know he's capable of making an explosive play. But in the games he was injured, who was playing? Well, Tyler Croft was the guy in the beginning of the season who was getting the starts. Croft played 10 games, had only 12 catches for 119 yards and 3 touchdowns. A couple of those touchdowns were big, important touchdowns, so don't downplay the impact those had. But what happened to Tyler Croft toward the rest of the season? Once Knox was available, Croft was inactive on game day. So that really tells you where he stood with McDermott and Bean, and they did rework his contract, which was originally a 3-year deal last offseason to only be a 2-year deal. So he is a free agent at this moment. So he will no longer be with the Buffalo Bills unless he re-signs. Then you have Lee Smith, right? Primarily blocking, leadership type guy. We know what Lee Smith is. I was surprised coming into this season that Lee Smith was not cut in the preseason. I thought he would be a cap casualty, again, trying to save that money. But it's probably a good thing he was there with the injuries and the lack of production we had at the tight end position this year. But he played in 10 games, 4 catches for 35 yards and 2 touchdowns. So again, the red zone need for a tight end is there on this Bills team. We know we have dynamic receivers. We know those guys are always going to be the big playmakers as long as they're on the team. But it would be nice to have a tight end who can give you a little bit more production than just in the red zone. And a lot of that, I think, is more the talent of Josh Allen, his ability to get the ball to the guy who's open in the red zone at the right time. And tight ends happen to be a good place to throw them the ball in the red zone. All right, so what else do we have on the roster? Well, we had Reggie Gill. Now, this is a guy I was super high on coming into the preseason last year. He just has the energy, the ability. He can block, he can catch, he can run. Originally was listed as a fullback, but before the season started, they switched him to the position of tight end. And as I said, he's primarily a blocker, but he can also catch. He did have 2 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown early on in the season. So that tells you he can be productive, and he will be on the roster next year. So right now, in my estimation, you got Knox, who's going to be the guy they want moving forward to be the number 1 guy. Croft, whose contract has expired, he's a free agent. Lee Smith, although he's under contract for 1 more year and $2.5 million, I think they're going to cut him as well. There's already been rumors that he could be retiring this year, so we'll see where that goes. But I don't think he'll be on the roster next season. Gilliam, who is locked up, but he's more of a fullback, blocking, maybe pass catching, occasionally tight end. Certainly not going to be anything crazy dynamic for you, or at least as far as our expectations at this moment are. And then you have Tommy Sweeney. When it comes to Sweeney, we know that he was injured coming into the season. He also ended up contracting COVID and was diagnosed with a heart condition after catching COVID. So that's a tough blow for this kid. I'm not even sure that he's going to be able to play football moving forward. So we really don't know what to expect from Tommy Sweeney at this point in time, and I don't think that we can rely on him. Again, last preseason there was talk maybe he'll take Lee Smith's spot if he can become more of a blocking tight end. But he has pass catch ability too, so there's something there. But what you can see with those guys I've listed, the lack of production, the guys who won't be there next year, there is a need at tight end on this team. Something has to happen at tight end for the Buffalo Bills going into 2021. We absolutely can say that. So where do we begin? Well, let's get one thing out of the way first. I know there's been a lot of talk about trading for a tight end. Specifically, 2 tight ends come to mind that I've heard in trade rumors. And that is Zach Ertz of the Philadelphia Eagles and David Njoku of the Browns, right? And these 2 guys, there's a reason they're being traded by the teams they're on. Not necessarily because of their lack of production, but because they have salaries and those teams feel like they have other guys who can do what those 2 can do. Zach Ertz, he's injury prone now. He's coming off an injured season. He's due $8.3 million. And David Njoku is due $6 million. David Njoku, the Bills had a chance to trade for him last offseason when a lot of people thought he would be an upgrade in the tight end room, and they did not. So that tells me that they're probably cold on the Njoku trade. And Zach Ertz, that $8 million salary, that's just his base salary, and he's been injury prone. Is he a playmaker? Sure. When he's healthy, he can do it. But I'm just not sure the Bills go all in a trade like that, especially in a season like this that we're in now. This COVID year has certainly, as we know, affected the salary cap situation going into the 2021 offseason. And that means that your resources are more valuable right now. So to give up draft picks in a trade or to give up whatever resources in a trade to get a tight end, you're basically saying we're going all in on this guy. And I don't think that the Bills are a tight end away from winning the Super Bowl. There's still a lot of other needs on this team to fill. So I do not think the Bills will pursue a trade at this position. I think there's too many other needs. There's too much going on. They're going to need to kick it up a notch somewhere in this roster. So if a trade is out of the question, where else can we get a tight end? So let's move on to free agency. Now, free agency, when you're looking at the guys that are available, I think the most important question to ask is how much bang do you get for your buck? You can pay top dollar for the top guy out there. This goes for any position, really. But if you do that, it comes at the expense of using that cap space, which is going to limit you on filling those other positions, as I alluded to earlier in the show. If you only have so much cap space and you've got 5 positions to fill, you need to fill all 5. If you upload on one of them, go all in, you're going to get replacement level players or worse at the rest of those positions. And that has worked for a few teams. I mean, Kansas City, you could argue, used that kind of model. But if we're looking at free agency, it's all about bang for the buck. So let's look at a few of the guys who are available. And I'm not going to go through the extensive list, but we'll start at the very top with probably the best available free agent out there, Hunter Henry, in terms of tight ends. Hunter Henry of the Chargers, right? He's a guy who can certainly take the Bills to that next level. He's a different type of receiver. He is a receiving threat at tight end. One of those guys who could be your leading receiver at tight end on a team. Up there with the Kelseys, with the Kittles, with the Wallers, the guys you want to have the ball as many times as possible when they're on your offense. But I'm not sure that's the direction the Bills are going with this. We already have elite wide receivers. We need a tight end who can compete with them, who can help them by getting open, and paying the salary for a top guy like Hunter Henry, again, for me, isn't going to put this team over the edge and make a Super Bowl. And Hunter Henry's projected contract on SpotTrack is $11 million a year over 4 years. So $11 million, that's a big number to take into this COVID-ridden offseason where the salary cap is much lower than everybody expected, and the Bills are already going to have to be creative making space. So as much as I think Hunter Henry could be a difference maker on this team, I don't see him even being a possibility for the Buffalo Bills at this point. So what other names are out there? If we're not going top tight end talent, who out there could the Bills possibly consider and sign? Well, I'll give you two more names. The first is a guy who has been talked about on the Cover One Network already. Greg and Anthony on their salary cap episode originally brought it up, and I retweeted the clip where Greg brings up this guy in particular, Jonnu Smith of the Tennessee Titans. He's a guy, Jonnu Smith, I really like him as a player. I think he can do all of the things the Bills want to do. He's not necessarily a tight end who is demanding of the ball, not a guy who, you want to see him get the ball on every play, but he is the type of tight end who can get open, who can be there, who can help your wide receivers, who can block still and still get the job done. And I think he would be the perfect fit for this Bills offense in terms of a veteran presence who knows what he's doing, can get the job done at the position, and might even be able to help somebody like Knox grow into his position. Now, what are the terms of that contract if they sign a guy like Jonnu Smith? I mean, if they go all in and sign him for 4 years, $8 million a year, that's another significant investment. I think I would be more interested if they could sign him on a shorter deal, maybe a 2-year deal with a large signing bonus for year one and a backlog cap hit for year two if you keep him, right? So Jonnu Smith, for me, is the tight end that I like that fits the Bills the most. He could be a game changer for this Bills team. I just said obviously Hunter Henry would be, but we can't afford him. Well, we go a few $1 million less, save that cap space for a player at another position, and Jonnu Smith could be the same type of answer you're looking for. We talked about the limited ability of the Bills tight ends in 2020. Jonnu Smith, for me, raises that bar to the next level. So he could be the guy. I'll bring up a couple other names that stood out to me when I was looking at the list of free agents. Gerald Everett, he was on the Rams. More of an outbreak season last year when he was the receiving threat for them and really had a bunch of touchdowns as well. This year he got outshined. He's more of the number 2 tight end on that team. And now he's a free agent, but he's shown that he is capable of being a receiving threat. I don't think he's as big or as good of a threat, as good of a fit as Jonnu Smith is for this team, but he could be, again, a guy you sign for maybe $7 million a year for 2 years and see what happens with it. We're going to have to do something at this position. If he's a guy who's dynamic enough as a pass catcher, and that's what you need to help Josh Allen, to help this offense, maybe he's the guy they go for. Maybe they can convince him or bring him in for a little less in order, again, every dollar counts under this salary cap. So if he's less than Jonnu Smith and they feel like he's a good fit, sure. But for me, again, that guy is Jonnu Smith. There's a lot of other names out there at the tight end position. You could go some veteran. I didn't even bring up Jared Cook, who's out there now. He's been great for New Orleans over the past 2 seasons. Maybe he comes at a cheaper cost because he's a little bit older than the other guys I've mentioned, a little more veteran. But again, is he the right fit for this team? Is he going to come at the right price for this team? I'm not so sure. So I don't think that Cook is a possibility. But I do think there are some bargain deals to be had here, right? That's the McBean special. Let's bring in a guy whose talent we like, who maybe hasn't had the opportunity to live up to this position, to show us everything that he's capable of doing. And some of the names I wrote down here, Dan Arnold, who was thrust into a starting position this year with the Arizona Cardinals and had some time with Drew Brees in New Orleans as well, right? So he's a viable pass catcher, going to come at much significant less a cost than any of the other free agents. Certainly feels a need as a body, as a threat, as somebody who has experience and can catch the ball. And James O'Shaughnessy is another name that came to mind, tight end for the Jaguars, who is now a free agent, could come at much, much cheaper. I'm talking maybe $1 million a year for 2 years and not fully guaranteed. So certainly team-friendly guys who you can bring in bodies at a cheap price. If we go all in at other positions of need, this might be the guys that you're looking at bringing in at the tight end position. All right, so there's plenty of other names out there at free agency, as I said, but I'm not going to go through them all. Those are the highlights for me. And as I said, my favorite on that list, who I would love to see as a Buffalo Bill, is Jonnu Smith. I'm not confident that that can happen, again, based on the salary he might be able to command in free agency. It's going to be interesting to see, just in general, if guys are able to demand top dollar in a season where the salary cap is so limited. But yeah, so he's the guy I could see moving forward. All right, so we've gone over 2 of the 3 possibilities here. We've said trade. I'm not high on that at all. I don't think that's a smart idea at this point in time. There's free agency, certainly a lot of names out there. They're going to rely on their evaluation of players that are available. And personally, I love the fit of Jonnu Smith on this Buffalo Bills offense. I think he can be the guy at the right price to bring this team to the next level at that position. And that brings us to the NFL draft. Obviously, this is the other place you can bring in talent at a cheap price, but it comes at a cost as well. You have to invest your draft picks. There are plenty of positions of need, plenty of guys out there in these draft positions that you could pick to fill holes. But tight end is certainly an interesting one in this year of 2021. And if we're going to talk about the tight end position, and I've spent a lot of time talking about those elite tight end guys who are number 1 receivers on their team, the number 1 tight end in this 2021 year is Kyle Pitts, and it's not even close. This guy is an elite tight end. He can do all of the things that the elite tight ends in the NFL can do. If you have a chance, just Google Kyle Pitts tape, and you will see what I mean. The guy looks like Travis Kelce watching him play. It's crazy. He can catch more contested balls, even when he's covered, double covered. He comes down with the ball. He's got excellent hands, excellent eyes. He's just absolutely superb at the position. Now, that being said, he's being drafted, or mock draft experts have him in the top 10 to 15 players in this draft. And he's probably one of the top elite offensive talents in the 2021 NFL draft altogether. And the Bills, obviously, are picking much lower in the draft this year than usual, being that we made it to the AFC Championship game. So therefore, I just don't see Pitts being a possibility for the Buffalo Bills. I would love, love, love to see it happen, but if it did, that would mean trading most of our assets to get up to maybe the 15th pick in the NFL draft overall. And to do that, you're going to be giving up multiple picks. And again, I just think that's too valuable in this season to do that. You need those picks to fill those holes to bring you to where you want to be, taking that next step into the Super Bowl when you're a team that's in contention like this. And as much as Kyle Pitts would transform this offense and be a great fit in any offense, I don't think he can quite be worth it. So what do I hope for Kyle Pitts? Well, my biggest hope is he doesn't get drafted by the AFC East. My second hope is he gets picked by an NFC team so that the Bills really don't have to see him much, because he is going to be one of those matchup nightmares that we've seen in the likes of Travis Kelce, right? And we know that Kelce's had his way with the Buffalo Bills. So I do not want to see him in the AFC East. I do not want to see him in the AFC. Hopefully an NFC team picks him and, we'll follow his career and root for him the same way we do like a guy like George Kittle, right? He's not too much of a threat to the Buffalo Bills because it's not often that we have to face up against him. All right, so if he's the elite number one guy, where does that leave us for the next couple of guys at this position? There's a lot of space in between number one and number two in this draft, I think. Again, number one is Pitts. He's up there in the top 15. Number 2, 3, and 4, depending on who you talk to, these guys are in different combination, but I'll give them to you in the ranking that I've seen them drafted. So, mock drafted. The next guy is Pat Freiermuth of Penn State. Dynamic pass catcher, has a lot of experience. He can block. Again, a lot of guys have him going in the second round, but he did end up having an injury this year, a shoulder injury. So it's going to be interesting to see how his physical works out and where teams have him ranked because of that injury. But overall, he has the talent that can translate to the NFL. I can tell you personally by watching his tape, nothing supremely jumped out at me. Yes, he has the talent. Yes, he can catch balls. Yes, he's going to be drafted and make it in the NFL. But I couldn't see anything that I was just like, wow, I'm sold on this guy. He's the one I want them to draft. So for me, I'm going to pass on Pat Freiermuth. But the next guy on this list, number 3, in general, is Brevin Jordan of the Miami Hurricanes. And this is a guy who I would say is the exact opposite of what I just said about Freiermuth. Watching his tape, I got excited. I said, wow, I like this kid. He really has what it takes to bring it to the next level, to bring a team up at the position of tight end, and especially where the Buffalo Bills are. We have Dawson Knox, who's our number 1 tight end right now. But if we were able to draft a guy like this in the second or third round, man, he could really bring that tight end room up. He's 6'3", 245 pounds. The biggest thing with him that I was impressed with is he beats coverage. He gets open. And there's no question if you're a tight end and you can get open, you're going to be able to make plays. He's a mismatch nightmare for guys because he's fast and he just burns the defenders. So when he can get open, he can beat coverage. He has excellent hands. He can catch, which, again, is something Dawson Knox might need to improve on. So we could use that at the tight end position. He can pass block, as I've said. He's a pretty good pass blocker. The only thing that didn't jump out for me in the tape with him was contested catches, 1-on-1, 2-on-1, whatever it is. I didn't see a lot of contested catches, mainly because he finds a way to get open. There weren't a lot of contested catches coming his way. So, I mean, that's a good thing, but who knows? I'm not sold that he could be the contested catch nightmare kind of guy. But he's probably my favorite pick on this list. Brevin Jordan of Miami. I think this is the guy I'm going to have highlighted for the Bills to pick in either the late second or early third round, wherever he may end up. But I think he is a great fit, a dynamic talent who continues to grow throughout his NFL career or throughout his college career, which I think is important for the Buffalo Bills. You see a guy who's gotten better and better, you're going to know that, all right, this guy hasn't reached his ceiling. He continues to work. He wants to get better. He has that drive. Let's see what he can do with us. So I would love for the Bills to draft this guy. A couple other names that are out there. I won't go too much into these last two guys. Tommy Tremble of Notre Dame is one of them that I've seen. I don't know much about him. I didn't watch too much tape on him, but he's a name that's been floated out there. And then Hunter Long of Boston College. This is another guy that I actually like. Going later in the draft, not quite as early. Some have him as early as the third, maybe the fourth round. He's 6'5", 253 pounds. And for what I just said about Jordan, the biggest thing that jumps out to me about Hunter Long is his contested catch ability. Man, this is Boston College. They knew that he was one of their most dynamic weapons, the teams facing them. They knew he was going to get the ball on third down. He was double covered, and he somehow always catches the ball. He makes a play. He gets the job done, which is really saying something for a guy at that level. Hopefully that can translate to the NFL. He's a big physical dude. He's not afraid to plow into guys, not afraid to take a hit. He's reliable. Third down, like I said, one of the things you expect from a tight end, third and short, you want teams to be threatened by what you have at the tight end position. And certainly I think Hunter Long could be that kind of guy coming to the NFL. He's also a solid blocker, which I think is overlooked now at the tight end position. Again, that's still part of it. When you think about a tight end, you think about a hybrid offensive lineman wide receiver. He's got to be able to block and he's got to be able to catch. And a guy like Hunter Long, I don't think he's ever going to be an elite NFL tight end, but certainly a guy who can translate, certainly come in and fill the role if they end up cutting Lee Smith or, going in a different direction at other places. Hunter Long is a guy I like as well. So those are the two of the names that I gave you that I really love. Brevin Jordan has to be the number one for me. I'm really hoping the Bills can find a way to get him in the third round. And then Hunter Long, if they miss on Jordan, if somebody drafts him earlier than they had him on their board, then Hunter Long is a guy I think can certainly fill a need for Buffalo. Both blocking and pass catchability and just, again, raising the talent level in that room. One of the things that Brandon Beane said in his postseason press conference was that the tight end position is one where we need to improve. He didn't mince words. And again, the thing I love about Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott is they don't lie to us. I've said this plenty of times on this podcast. They don't lie. They tell you something, they do it, right? Last year it was, we need to score more points. We're going to improve the offense. Guess what? They did it. This year, one of the things they said, Sean McDermott said the running back room's got to get better. Brandon Beane said the tight end production has got to get better. He was not happy with it at all. So clearly, if he brought it up in the postseason press conference, he's going to address it in the offseason. There's plenty of changes that need to be made on this team in going into 2021. And Brandon Beane is going to have to work some contract magic to make the cap space we need to be able to sign guys, to re-sign our own, to focus on the positions we need, and also to bring guys in at tight end. All in all, the one thing I can absolutely 100% guarantee you is they're bringing in tight ends, whether that is through free agency or the draft, whether it's low budget guys or, high draft picks, as I mentioned here. They are going to have to make changes at the tight end position. And again, if your goal is to beat the top talent teams, if you want to compete with Kansas City, you've got to score more points than Kansas City. And how do you do that? You make your offense even more dynamic. And the way to do that for the Buffalo Bills, one of the most glaring needs is to upgrade that tight end position. Make it more of a threat. That's what Brandon Beane said. Teams preparing to play the Buffalo Bills did not see the tight end position as a threat. They completely overlooked it, and they weren't scared of it at all. We got 9 touchdowns out of the position this year. But that was mostly on the efficiency of Josh Allen in the red zone, his ability to find the guy who was open at the time. But the one prevailing fact here is changes have to be made. I'm telling you, I'm really high on some of these guys in the draft. Those of you who listen know that our regular listeners over the years, I'm not a draft guru. I've never considered myself the draft guru. But last year I did more work than I have ever done preparing for the draft. I looked at tape, I looked at guys, I followed mock drafts, I did my own studies, and the two things I said that came true were, number one, the Bills were going defense in round 1, or round 2 in this case, with their first pick. And they did, right? It wasn't the guy I thought they picked, but they picked him. They picked Epinesa at that spot. And then my second prediction was I wanted Zach Moss in round 3. And that's absolutely what they went out and did. And the jury's still out on Zach Moss, but I believe he's going to be a key piece of this offense going into 2021. That being said, this year I am high on these tight ends, and I went deep into my coverage here, and I'm going to be bringing it up as we go along and do our mock drafts, and maybe I'll have the Bills at this point in time taking multiple tight ends in the draft. One maybe a little earlier in the 3rd round, one maybe later in the 7th round, or signing somebody who goes undrafted. Because this is a position where, again, the Bills need bodies. No matter what way you twist it, they are going to need guys at the tight end position who are new to this team in 2021. I don't see Tyler Croft coming back, even if it's at pennies on the dollar. Even, they said what they said with him when they started making him inactive on game days. You're not worthy of an active spot on this team. You're not really affecting the game on game day. All right. So we need guys who are going to do that. So right now at this point in time, my number one priority, what GM Anthony Romeo would do, is try and sign a guy like Jonnu Smith. Bring him in. You've immediately upgraded the position. You've immediately solidified the position. You have Dawson Knox as well. Man, that seems like a double threat to me, and I would love that to happen. But if you're unable to sign a guy like that, you still have to bring in some kind of veteran, be it Dan Arnold or some other, cheap on the fly, somebody who can play the position and start, somebody who's reliable but not necessarily explosive, and then spend that capital in the draft. I want Brevin Jordan. I'm saying it now. I'll say it all the way come March, unless something crazy happens, unless something comes up with his character, which, as we know again, McBean likes to draft high character guys. So I will gladly take Jonnu Smith and Brevin Jordan in the draft and consider the Bills' tight end position now one of those elite positions that teams do have to plan for on top of our dynamic wide receivers. And the question then becomes, is that enough to put us over the top? Is that enough to beat the Kansas City Chiefs? Is that enough to score more points to keep our team competitive on offense? It's not going to be enough solely by itself. We know that. The offensive line is another position where bodies are needed. They have to bring guys in, as Eric spent the last podcast talking about. There's lots of options at offensive line too. That's going to be an interesting one to see which direction the team is moving forward. And the running back position, as Sterling did in episode 1 of this series. It's going to be an interesting offseason, and right now we're focusing on the offense. So where does that bring us? I think next week, Sterling on the podcast is going to bring you the wide receivers. So he will come from the perspective of wide receiver, see if there's guys out there. Certainly there's positions to talk about. Isaiah McKenzie is a free agent again. And I know Sterling has been high on some of the speedy guys who could also serve as return men in the event that we don't keep our return guy. So who knows? Andre Roberts is also a free agent. So look forward to Sterling's podcast next week on wide receivers. We've already done the other offensive positions. After that week, we will come back together as a trio. You'll get all three of us again, and we will discuss the offense and what positions, what direction we think the Bills are going to go. Will they sign free agents? Will they draft in the first 2 rounds? Will they pick offensive talent and which positions they go with? So we're looking forward to the content we have going. As you know, we are part of the Cover One Network. Guys, it's the off season, but we haven't slowed down. We haven't stopped. We're still going. You can catch our show, The Hoof Live, every Tuesday night on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the avenues you want. And we love it when you guys are there to interact with us and talk with us. We let you drive the show as we go on. We put up your comments. We try to respond to them as we go. So please tune in for that. And the rest of the Cover One Network is still bringing it as well. You know, you've got all the shows lined up for the week. Greg Tomset and Aaron Quinn on Wednesday. You've got Anthony Prohaska still doing his thing. You've still got the film breakdown with the great Eric Turner. So, you know, tune in to Cover One. Tune into the Hoof Podcast. Give us a like. Give us a share. Tell your friends about us. You know, that's how we get ourselves out there, right? We're not making lots of money on this. We do this for fun. We want to get you the best content we can. And the best way we do that is by you liking, sharing, subscribing, talking to your friends and neighbors, fellow Bills fans, NFL fans alike. Tell them you like us, tell them what we do, and keep it going. And all right, that's going to summarize it for me in this tight end episode. My first solo podcast. Not so bad, I think. We'll see. Tell me what you guys think. You know, hit me up on Twitter, all of that. Always love interacting with you. And I want to thank everybody for reaching out on the birth of my son, Logan Romeo. He is a joy already. Being a father totally changes you from the moment it happens. And I could say it's been an absolute joy. I love being a father already. I can't wait to share in my Bills experience with him, dress him all up in the Bills gear I can, have him with me while I'm watching the game. It's going to be awesome. But thank you all for the well wishes and reaching out. It's really been an absolutely spectacular experience, and I appreciate the love from all of Bills Mafia. All right, so I'm going to close it out there, and as always, go Bills.